Welcome to Linux Saloon, a place to discuss tech, open source, and where Linux is always on tap. Each show will have a talk about a Linux project, such as a distribution, desktop environment, or an application, any sorts of wonderful varieties of open source goodness that we can sink our teeth into is what we do. We also like to chat about any news or a variety of topics from the community. Anything that is Linux, tech, and open source related is on the table for discussion. I'm Nate, a Linux fitness and vintage tech enthusiast with an almost unhealthy obsession with the OpenSUSE project. And with me today, I got a fantastic panel of peoples. I've got Eris, Chris, Jinda, and Neil just snuck in as the doors are opening up. Oh, look at that.
Hey, Neil.
Such a happy face. Well, and then he hides his face. So how is everyone tonight?
A little bit of a weird perspective because, I'm looking down at the computer, and so you either got this because, you can see there's the
vent. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I've always kind of felt like you've looked down on me anyway, so that's all right.
No.
I'm
no
just kidding.
way.
I'm just kidding. Gotta have fun with everything, right, Neil? So be
That's
sure.
true.
What's that? Be sure to do the straw poll if you have not done so yet. How your experience has been with Distrobox or BoxBuddy, Distrobox and BoxBuddy, I suppose, or one or the other. Well, you have to do BoxBuddy, you need Distrobox, so that chestnut. So on the docket for today, we're going to have a chat about that straw poll. We're going to get into the application appetizer of Distrobox/BoxBuddy, and then we'll talk about what's going on next week. Do a little housekeeping and such, and then if there's time, do any news or whatnot. But first, what I've been doing in Linux and tech, I really didn't bother anybody. Did anybody have anything they want to talk about? Anything cool that they did? No?
I played with BoxBuddy a lot. I can admit that.
Oh, okay.
Distrobox and
I did too. In fact, I wrote an article on cubiclenate.com of just kind of how you use it. I feel like there's a little bit of a, I don't know.
misconfusion.
Well, it's like a little bit of a learning curve. What is Distrobox? How do you use it?
Yeah.
And
it is.
until you brought up BoxBuddy, I never really thought to use that because I didn't know it existed.
But it explained it to me.
Yeah, it did. And it made it really easy.
You know what I mean? At first I didn't get it at all. And I'm like, okay. And then I go, well, is there anything else to help me use it? And I looked it up and found it. And that was what worked.
Yeah, and I think what's really neat about it is how I'm going to be implementing it for long-term usage. So I use OpenSUSE Tumbleweed, which is not an immutable distribution. I know that's all the rage. But what I found is I have these issues where I keep adding applications, and so I'm adding community repositories, and then when I go to update, it takes a little bit longer, and then sometimes there are conflicts between packages, and then so I have to manually kind of use this repo, use that repo, just keep the obsolete, and then it takes longer to get through that. So I've kind of changing how I'm going to be trying out software now, which I think is pretty cool. But I did want to actually mention something else. So I did learn something new in on managing input devices in Linux. So it works in Wayland, which is the important part, and that kind of keyed it on that because it doesn't use. I think Wayland does not use X input or something like that. I don't know exactly the differences, but
it uses lib input.
Lib input, that would make sense.
Although the X input protocol. So the problem with that saying X input, right? So there's two X inputs. One that is an X input that is from X, and the other is the X input from Windows. Because direct X input is a thing,
right?
And so yeah, I mean most people call it direct input, but it gets shortened to X input. Don't ask me these things. I don't know why, but in Wayland land you are usually using lib input, and that covers not just your typical pointer devices. It also covers your keyboard. It covers graphic tablets. It covers the whole gamut of things, as opposed to in the X world where you have a mixture of protocols and interfaces to handle the different types of devices.
Gotcha. Well, there's an issue that I had with Wayland. Well, not Wayland, but a Lenovo where the Trackpoint decided it would just do whatever it wants to do. It wasn't. It would either slam your pointer to the top or to the bottom, and then it would kind of do weird stuff. And I didn't know how to disable it. And so there's not a feature like in Plasma to be able to just turn that off. But what I did learn is that you can actually since kernel 5.11, there has been a inhibited flag for any devices that you can just toggle with like an echo. I wrote a little article in kubuntu.com on this, and not to plug me, but hey, since I'm here, I was pretty excited about figuring this out. And so what I was able to find where the track point is by it's under, like, if you cat proc bus input devices, then you can actually find where what the device is. Interestingly, it's called Trackpoint. I use that right in the name. And I was able to just toggle the inhibited on there, and then I could actually use the Lenovo computer properly. Everything else worked just fine. So I disabled that, then it was good to go. So that was pretty exciting that I figured that out. It took a little while to find the answer, and it's very simple. It was buried someplace, and then of course it wasn't the very first thing I searched for. So should I have a problem again? I may never have a problem again, but I have my notes there published for everyone else to look at. Anyway, that was one fun thing I did this week. Cool, riveting. Thanks, Nate. That was exciting. Be sure to share hot takes like that again, huh?
Well, Nate, now that you mention it, I did see something from you from Linux Out Loud, talking about what is Linux missing?
Yes, I did talk about that. Well, I think Windows is actually missing a lot more than Linux, but go ahead.
Sure. But no, that wasn't the part that was interesting. I don't care about the subject heading of what you were talking about. Normally, that has nothing to do with what you're actually saying in the episode anyway. So, No, what I found interesting was that you were talking about how you didn't have an IPKVM to use, because you used Synergy/Barrier, and you didn't have something to use. So that's some good news for you.
Do you have good news?
I do have good news. It's going to be delayed gratification news, so it's not great news, but it is good news.
That's okay.
Yeah. So, there is a fork of... So, Barrier is dead. So, there's the bad news up front. Barrier got forked into a new project called InputLead.
Okay.
And that project has support for running, doing IPKVM stuff on Wayland.
Nice.
But the feature needed to support it in KDE Plasma won't be there for a while yet. I think the plan is to have it for 6.1, which is slated to be released in June. But it is not there yet. You could, if you are so inclined to use GNOME, It works now in GNOME as of, so we're on 45. Yeah, 45. Okay. GNOME 45 includes support for it. So it's a thing. The protocols are all specified. The portal things are all there. You can actually do it. It is just now up to the desktops to actually plumb in the remaining support.
Gotcha.
So it's coming.
Well, that's good news.
As that meme that I always post in Telegram, Neil, you are banned. No. Yeah.
Oh, okay, I guess I'll leave then.
No.
No.
He bans me from Linux Saloon all the time. It's weird how it is. I'm not sure how to be banned from it.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a thing. I don't think you could do that.
No.
Yeah, well, that's really good news, because that's something that I miss using. I'd be using it right now if I could. But there is. I'm patient. I've been waiting a long time for a lot of different things in Linux, and so at this point, it's just I'll get it when I get it, I suppose. But yeah, that's exciting. I'm really glad to hear that, because I find that would be really handy to use. I mean, if it will work with Windows, be compatible with the Windows version as well. Like, if it be a Windows version of that, so I can from a one machine to another.
Yeah, it should be.
Yeah,
Yeah, it should be fine.
That would be great if that that ends up working well. Yeah, I have
Unfortunately, distributions haven't packaged it yet. As far as I know, the only distribution that's got it is Fedora. So,
Of course. Yep.
Yeah, Fedora what? That's
well, I mean, it's in Fedora since Fedora 39.
Oh.
okay.
So it's let me see. Yeah, I think it's just 30. Yeah, 39. It was added. So, yeah, other distributions haven't really picked it up. I think most distributions and most people, maintainers and so on, aren't really aware that they need to replace barrier with input leaf yet.
okay.
That's probably the issue.
Well, I should actually let you know on my framework I am running Fedora 39.
Whoa! Nate runs Fedora instead of OpenSUSE.
Wait, what?
I'm
Right?
in Distrobox.
Whoa.
A
I'm
Distrobox of
shocked.
it. No, a Distrobox of it. I got.
Oh well,
if
that doesn't matter.
I know.
That doesn't matter. If you're running a Distrobox of it, you're just running a container. I don't care.
Yeah.
It would be news if you actually put it bare metal on your computer.
I have before.
Exactly.
I have before. I
But
do.
you didn't stick with it.
No, there's a few little things with it, and maybe it's fixed now. But there was the file dialog and Firefox would open up not K-file dialog, and that just really annoyed me.
Right.
And
Yeah.
Kubuntu couldn't do it
that
either.
annoys me too.
Yeah. Then it was
That's
actually
because it's an OpenSUSE KDE specific patch to Firefox that makes it do that. On our side in Fedora KDE, because we are Wayland, because we ship with Wayland out of the box, it should actually just automatically use the KDE dialog through the portal system.
Oh, that'd be great.
So yeah, I mean, but everything's all fresh and new with Fedora 40 for Plasma 6, so I just finished upgrading all of my computers.
And did you have any issues with Plasma 6 so far?
Not really. I was pleasantly impressed and pleasantly surprised and impressed how much of a non-event the upgrade was.
I love to hear that. That's a glorious thing right there. That's cool. Yeah, I noticed there've been a lot of like Qt 6 packages I've noticed showing up over the last year or so on Tumbleweed. So I figured then that was the, loading the chamber before they fire the main event. That's pretty cool. Well, excellent. I guess we should probably get on to the straw poll that we just yapped away about everything. So the straw poll was, how was your experience with Distrobox? And there was another one for, how was your experience with BoxBuddy? And I guess we didn't get a whole lot of feedback on this one. I did put that one on the social medias as well. So how'd that end up there, Eris?
So let me refresh one last time. For Distrobox, the number one answer was, it is amazing. Now what would be my excuse for distro hopping? That's 30%. And then 20% followed by 20%, it is good. Followed by 20% not interested in this exploration. Followed by 20% Tux Penguin. And the last answer was not interested in doing explorations in general, 10%. And as far as BoxBuddy, the number one answer was, it is amazing. Saved me from the terminal, 20%. And then 20% not interested in this exploration. And then 20% didn't have enough time, busy with work, busy with life. 10% it is good. And 10% did not have a good time with it. I did not get any replies to any of the polls.
Gotcha. Well, I understand not having enough time. This one was probably took a little more time, which is why I kind of teed this one up for a little while to see, hopefully get more people to try that out. But I'm going to, I know Jinda, you introduced me to BoxBuddy. That's what really got me excited. And so I installed that this week. And then I'd played with Distrobox a little bit over the last month or so, I think it was.
Okay.
With success. No, I didn't use it a lot, but I think the BoxBuddy for me was really kind of a game changer in the whole thing because
yeah, it was.
It really makes using it a lot easier as far as being able to like see everything and get into something. It's a little more intuitive, and also it's nice to be able to update the box just by a click, which is pretty cool. You know, it's kind of just started the update process. Now, did your view applications, did that work properly for you in BoxBuddy?
Everything worked fine,
Okay.
but I used the Flatpak version of it, and I had to install BoxBuddy as their script. They had like a simple script that you typed in and it would download it and install it for you.
Okay.
If I did that, it worked. But if I used like the repository one in my distro, some of the features did not work in BoxBuddy properly. There's like one of the features is like, say, when you install an application in BoxBuddy, like say you install Kate or like a file manager or something, if you go and click on it, you can send that to your menu, or in your applications list. That section didn't work, but it did work because I tested this out before I actually installed it on my system because I'm that way. When you install it by using by BoxBuddy script, then everything was flawless with BoxBuddy.
Interesting. Maybe I need to do that again then. So who here tried Distrobox and BoxBuddy? So obviously Jinda, probably Eris, I'm guessing. I'm sure Neil has probably used it extensively.
Yeah, I fiddled around with it a bunch because I think this is kind of what the OpenSUSE MicroOS family kind of prefers these days. So
okay.
So it like Distrobox is, I think, shipped quote unquote out of the box on the MicroOS flavors. So I fiddled with it a few times. The Rusty GTK Advaita front end thingy, not so much, but it's also fairly simple. It shows what you have and gives nice icons for it. Like, I mean, from my perspective, it's a nice representation of what's actually on there, and not much more else for me to say.
Yeah, it's a very simple interface, which I think is perfect. Anything complex you can do, once you get inside the terminal for it. So Jinda, you said you did a different way of installing BoxBuddy. I'll have to look and see. I'm gonna try that again. I'm gonna try installing it again to see if maybe that solves my issues. And Chris, did you get a chance to install or to try Distrobox? Nope, no worries.
No.
You can ask all kinds of questions. Then you're kind of like the anything that I don't have an answer for, somebody I'm sure will.
Right.
And Swift, welcome. Dr. Linux, welcome. It's nice to have y'all here. I kind of like y'all, even though I'm not from the South.
Good to be here, Nate.
Y'all is efficient and southern, so it's good and bad.
I'm not sure which is the good part.
You can choose.
Right.
You can choose to figure out which is good and which is bad.
Right.
Well, the actually, you is the plural form of you because thou is the singular, but we've dropped using that. Unless you're my phone, which keeps trying to correct me to use thou all the time. And like my phone, which I have like an old copy of Swipe keyboard that I bought before Microsoft bought Dragon and Nuance and all that other stuff and shut it all down. It absolutely insists that I need to use thou. And I'm like, no. No one talks like that.
No.
Why are you making me use thou?
Maybe you haven't
right.
maybe somehow it got set to King James English or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not set to British English, so it's not like Spanish, where like if I choose Latin American Spanish, I have only nosotros. But if I use Castilian Spanish or Spain Spanish or whatever, then I have vosotros, which is archaic in Latin American Spanish, but is still considered used in European Spanish. Like, yes, I also took Spanish for years. I actually know these things too, even though I don't really speak Spanish anymore.
I know that blows my mind. The whole, some countries use tú and some use vos or vosotros, and it's like, what? Yeah.
Oh my God, yeah. So like there's the formal thou, so there's the thou, which is the singular you, then there's the you, that's the plural you, that's now the singular you in English, but then you have in Spanish where you have tú, you have vu, you have then nosotros and vosotros.
Vosotros,
Oh, and then because like tú and usted, right? Those are the formal and informal, the informal and formal versions. But then for we, you've got nosotros and vosotros. It's like there's a lot. There's a lot going on here.
Mm-hmm. There is. And about the what Nate was saying about the ThinkPad, what is the little red thing above the B button? It's like a little red.
Yeah, that's the Trackpoint.
That's the Trackpoint, or as they'll call it, the nub, the nipple, or various other things I'm not going to say on a recorded stream.
And
I guess that's for if the trackpad didn't work, you could use that.
No, the Trackpoint was first. So ThinkPads originally didn't have a trackpad. They had just the Trackpoint, and one of the reasons why the buttons that ThinkPads typically have physical buttons for left and right mouse buttons is they're not for the touchpad, they're not for the trackpad, they're for the Trackpoint. You're supposed to use the Trackpoint over the keyboard and have basically a 3-finger arrangement where you can press the buttons super quickly, but you can also then move the pointer around using the Trackpoint.
So what I
don't like it.
What I like about it is if you hold, I think if you hold the middle button, and then you use a Trackpoint up, or like the direction of the Trackpoint, it'll actually scroll the content what we have. So it's really great for like spreadsheets, or if you have if you're zoomed in on something like on a graphic editor, you can then scroll it around. It's very handy, and I do miss it quite a bit.
On conventional mice, you can trigger this by pressing down on your scroll wheel, because that is just one-click scroll. That's all it is. In the Trackpoint, you have to do it especially because the Trackpoint is special. So, but it's just middle-click scroll.
Oh, I didn't even know what that was until I just touched it and the mouse moved, and I was like, oh, so that's what that little red nub does. Yeah.
I wish the framework had that.
Me too. I wish a lot more computers had that.
Yeah.
I am so happy it doesn't exist on more computers.
Well, HP
because
and
there
Dell
is actually there's a penalty to having a Trackpoint.
Oh,
the trackpads have to be smaller because there's more physical real estate being allocated to another pointer device to also have the physical buttons and stuff. And nowadays, most people want a multi-touch experience where multi-finger gestures are easy to do. And in order to do that, you need a lot of real estate for the trackpad. Well, that real estate has to come from somewhere. So, if you look at Lenovo computers, ones that have Trackpoints have much smaller trackpads than the models that Lenovo sells that don't have them. And that's why.
I guess I understand. I do. I get it.
I'm a gestures guy. I use touch gestures. Like, this probably comes from 10 years of using a Mac, where like I'm super used to being able to just literally just graze my hand on the trackpad and all the things I ever want it to do just happen. And I like being able to have that workflow to the point that, like, at one point I bought a trackpad for my desktop because I like being able to do that kind of thing.
Yeah, I will say, since Wayland, I really like the gestures. So for like changing the desktop, like to move desktops, the 3-finger swipe, so I can navigate to different virtual desktops. Really nice in Plasma.
Oh yeah, that's awesome.
And then also, And then if I like kind of do this on the trackpad, touchpad, whatever it's called, it'll do like an overview, so I can go jump into a desktop or look, jump into an application or whatever, and that's also really cool too. I like that a lot. Doesn't work in X, but I've not been running X for a while now, so it doesn't really matter. Yeah, it's really neat. In fact, it makes me want to have when I'm at work, I dock my my framework, so it's closed, and so it's just on, just projecting everything onto a screen. And I think to myself, man, it'd be really nice if I just had a trackpad still next to, I use a mouse most of the time, but every once in a while I want to do something. I want the gestures, basically, is what I want. I'm sure I can make it work with a mouse, no problem. It's not a big deal. But sometimes I just want to be able to really quickly, do whatever with the gestures.
The Apple Magic Trackpad works great on Linux.
Does it?
Just pick up one of those. Yeah. Just
Really?
pick up one of those and plug it in. Or virtually plug it in, because it's Bluetooth and wireless. But
right,
it works great.
Really? I was thought about that, but I'm like, well, I don't know. I don't want to have to bang my head against the wall or something with it. But if it works great, then maybe I should look at getting that then.
That's just like, I haven't seen this in many years, since probably 2010. It was at a church. It was on the secretary's desk, but it was a mouse, but it didn't move. It just had a big red ball in the middle of it. You don't move it at all. It was so weird.
Trackball.
Yeah.
Oh, trackball.
Yeah,
I had never seen those.
A guy I work with, he uses that exclusively. He doesn't use a mouse.
It's supposed to be better for your wrist.
So it works the same way. You just move the red ball, and that moves the mouse. Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's like playing Centipede.
Oh.
Well, it's actually a little different from a Trackpoint, but the principles are similar.
And it's better on your wrists. Wow.
Well, so that answer to that is complicated. Because like all things when it comes to ergonomics, it depends on how it's positioned and how it's shaped and how you use it.
Right.
Like if you put it in a weird position, and by the way, you should probably buy trackballs that are shaped for whether you're right-handed or left-handed. The ambidextrous ones are bad. They're not good. They're uncomfortable for either way you use it. So get one that's actually shaped for which way you want your thumb to move, and then make sure you have a good resting position, and it needs to feel like you're not putting pressure on your wrists, because the same problem that you have with your mouse can also happen with the trackball. You have to take explicit care to make sure you're not doing that, because you're not moving your wrists, you are not going to notice that you're putting the pressure on as much as you would when you're using a mouse.
That's just like I used to also have one of those Microsoft keyboards, but it was split in the middle, so you turned your hand.
Those are ergonomic keyboards.
Yeah, I love that thing. I had it for years.
I still use my Logitech Wave K350 that I bought. Oh my gosh, I think now, to give you an idea of how old it is, it has a Windows XP version of the Windows logo on it. That is...
Oh Lord.
It's very old. But it works great. I just replace the batteries every 3 years and I'm good.
Yep. Mine's a Logitech. Logitech K520. It has the mouse, and then you plug the little receiver into the front of the computer.
I do like the Logitech because if they support the devices support the
universal receiver.
Yes, that some of them don't.
Yeah.
That because you can, if you lose your dongle, you can just get another dongle and you can very easily pair it. There's a really, I think it's Solar or something like that. What it's called in Linux.
But as you see, this one is
that's the one that can program a unifying receiver. I don't know if there's one for the new Bolt receiver, but the unifying receiver, yeah.
Oh, would have a new
Logitech switched to a new protocol. They made a new version, and I don't know if that's supported by Solar yet.
Thanks, Logitech.
But as you see,
I was going to sing the praises about you, but now I'm not sure now.
But as you see, what I just held up is not an ergonomic, unfortunately. But
Well, there you go. So as far as
Could we explain what Distrobox is? I don't
Oh,
think
I'm
we
sorry.
were explaining.
So I think the best way I can describe it's basically you can have a containerized distribution within your distribution. Essentially, it uses some form of Docker, I guess. Uses some components of Docker, and it allows you to take advantage of other distributions within your distribution of choice. So in a way, it's, and I'm probably wrong on this, but a lot of the new cool distributions, like Blend OS, allows you to basically use whatever components you want from any distribution, and it kind of works like that. And I'm not sure. Well, I don't know if it works like that, but it gives you those abilities, but on whatever distribution you want. So the couple of things I couldn't figure out on how it worked, but it works. So I don't know if I don't know where it stores those particular images. I searched for different places, couldn't find any answers. I'm sure I can figure it out if I have enough images in there to just, if I have it take a big enough chunk, I can find it eventually, but I haven't gotten there yet. So Distrobox is described, someone's here, so Chuck GG says, I've seen Distrobox described as Windows subsystem for Linux. I guess it might be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just going to say that WSL. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But anyway, so the way I'm using Distrobox now is I'm moving clutter, as it were, out of my host system. I'm just gonna use that term, and I'm moving the different components of like additional bits of software that are not like that aren't in the main repositories essentially into, or out of a few select, I should say, into the Distrobox containers. And also I'm using it for, like, let's say I want some tools just the way Kali Linux does it. I'm actually using those tools in Kali in a Kali container essentially, but on my host distribution. So what's neat is you can start and stop those containers as well, and so you can have it completely shut off and not taking any resources. So that's how I'm using it, and I think that sort of explains it. So it's not a virtual machine; it's a container. It uses whatever kernel you're running. It uses there's some other components. I can't recall exactly what, but basically it's not a virtual machine. I don't think it'd be considered virtualization at all. It's not using any virtualization.
No.
Anything. It's probably closer
containers.
to like, it's containers. I think it'd be closer to like a Troot environment than it would be a virtualization. But
I'm going to blow your minds.
Blow my mind.
It's still virtualization, just really bad virtualization.
Ooh, bad virtualization.
Ooh. So we typically understand virtualization. We understand virtualization under two axes: partitioning of resources and isolation of isolation of systems. The axes of partitioning of resources, this is what we understand or term today as containers. And if you look at that, that's what a lot of this is all about. Like you're basically creating a new execution environment, and you're allowing it to operate in that context with minimal access to the host context. There's some access because you're sharing a kernel, you're sharing a number of API file systems like procsys, dev, whatever, those things, and you're sharing sockets and stuff like that so that graphical applications work. But all in all, it's partitioning of resources, and it's a partitioning that you use to have another execution environment. In the olden days, this was what people referred to in a lot of cases as virtualization. Virtualization, as what we understand, as what is colloquially commonly known, is basically you take that partitioning and you also add isolation. You're now emulating hardware resources and emulating computer resources so you can boot it up as if it's a completely separate machine. But all of this is just layers of virtualization. And it's been stuff that we've done since, I don't know, the 60s, 70s, I think, with IBM mainframes. I mean, look up LPARs someday, the logical partitions. That's where all of this stuff starts.
So it is but
it is
is
virtualization, but nobody understands it to be virtualization, so we don't use the term.
Okay. So in that sense, wouldn't something like a Flatpak or Snap be a kind of virtualization too, since they have their own runtimes? Okay.
You see, what makes them virtualized is that they what really sets them apart from, say, like just sandboxing is you are partitioning resources away. You've partitioned away a sub-operating system environment. So you have, for example, in Flatpak, you have the Flatpak runtime, that the free desktop runtime maintained by CodeThink. So you have that for Flatpaks from FlatHub, or the Fedora runtime for Flatpaks made by Fedora, and so on. And then with Snaps, they're running the Ubuntu core runtime, because that's what you typically do, unless you're the Godot engine, which has a custom Fedora-based runtime. That's a whole other kettle of fish, but it's still a thing. But the point being, right, is if you have a completely custom execution context, you're now in this realm of virtualization, because you're doing full-on partitioning.
So George Castro, which I've not seen this name here before, so welcome. He's saying it's 100%. It 100% is not virtualization, but I think it's a.
Well, that's why I said it is and it isn't, because the way that we commonly talk about virtualization today is both isolation and partitioning. But virtualization has historically been defined across two axes. This is why we use the term containerized. But there's actually three levels. You have partitioning, you have sandboxing, and then you have isolation. When you combine all three, you have operating system virtualization, because you have computer virtualization.
Okay.
You could also go another level and say, I want to fake a system. I want it to be completely cut off from the host, and that's emulation. And you see this more commonly when you're trying to play retro games. But,
right.
But emulation is, and there are different axes to have emulation. This is why the Wine name is so funny, because it says Wine is not an emulator. But in some sense it is, because it emulates the Windows programming interface and the Windows application interfaces and translates them to Linux ones to run them. And this is why George is going to be mad at me, because I'm basically digging up all these other ways of considering all this stuff, which is going to be deliberately confusing and fun, but I'm also here for the chaos.
Well, I appreciate that, and a little bit more confusion and causing a few neurotransmitters to crash in my head is all the better, I think. So George also.
But if you want, sorry.
I say George Castro says when people say containerization, they mean using the namespace and cgroups feature in the kernel. Okay.
No, most people don't know what that is.
Okay.
When people think of containerization, they think of a Docker-like interface. That is, most people don't know anything about C groups or namespaces or the fact that it uses unshare or any of this other stuff, right? There's a whole lot of, yes, George is right. That's technically what's actually happening under the covers, and that all started with LXC. But anyone who talks about containers in a colloquial sense doesn't know any of that.
Okay.
Only the technical sense, I think someone might have that. And again, it's not true, because guess what? Windows containers don't do that. They don't use C groups. They don't use unshare. They don't use namespaces. They use Hyper-V thin paravirtualization. So again, how do you want to go down this rabbit hole? Because I can break every assumption you like. And then jails.
Right. So before we get down to jails, So Agree the Digital says containers do not virtualize the hardware. So I think that might be another distinction, I guess you could say. And
Yeah, no, I mean, sometimes they do, but most of the time they don't.
And George also says, I ain't mad, LOL. So good. I'm glad you're not mad, George. I don't know. Nobody should be mad at the Linux Saloon. Where this is a place to suspend. I know what S state that is. Is that S1? No. Anyway, to suspend the troubles of the world and just talk tech and enjoy a conversation. And he also
I think you mean S3 suspend. That's the one where
S3.
you put it to sleep for a little bit.
Right. But it's not totally asleep. It's not worried about all your processes. Just worried about keeping the RAM active.
Unless you want it to be S0 suspend, where it can just wake up and bother you anyway.
That does happen. And then George also goes on and says, right, for most people, that's Docker. So yeah. And CJ1998 says, sounds more like how Flatpak works to me. And I think that's in a way how I've rationalized it. Yeah. How I've rationalized, like Flatpak is another way of expressing what Distrobox is doing. And for immutable distributions, I think that seems to be like the way to go for installing software that's not part of the core system.
So one of the reasons for this is that there was a decision made years ago to couple delivery with sandboxing. So these are orthogonal concepts. Technically, if you break down Flatpak, it's actually two pieces of things.
Okay.
You have a distribution mechanism using OS tree as the underlying thing, which can sometimes be wrapped in an OCI image, which is what, if you see what Universal Blue is doing, they're taking that to the logical extreme of doing that with operating systems itself. But Flatpak is fundamentally an OS tree file system of an application. And the second piece is a tool called Bubble Wrap, which maps the interfaces in Linux for sandboxing to a common set of options that are then able to be programmed by an application packager that is packaging a Flatpak to set these up and configure them. This second part, this bubble wrap, can actually be used with anything, including a regular application you've installed traditionally. There is no actual requirement to use Flatpak to have sandboxed applications. But it was done that way because there was this feeling back then that there would be no way to introduce sandboxing for traditional execution environments. Now, I disagree with this premise because we've seen that Microsoft and Apple have actually both been rolling out sandboxing even for applications you deliver traditionally in those platforms. But that is the way that we've kind of rolled with this. So you look at Snap and Flatpak, and they couple the idea of sandboxing or locking down applications with changing the method in which you deliver them in the hope that it makes it an easier pill to swallow. This is a similar reason to why we have the change from X11 to Wayland. Changing to Wayland, a lot of the reason for Wayland's existence stems from there is basically no fundamental way to lock down the X11 protocol without breaking everything. And if you're going to have to break everything to turn on, for example, the X11 security extension, then you might as well just go ahead and make a new protocol that has these assumptions baked in and start porting things to it. So this is where, and again, this kind of goes along the axis of, is this a technical problem, or is this a people problem, or is this a process problem? And the answer to that question is yes.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And so there you go.
Well, even now, the weakest link in every organization's cybersecurity is the user. Not the systems themselves, but the user opening up an oopsie into the organization. So, yeah. So it's all three. Well, I think the exciting thing. Well, let me get back to I got kind of a list of questions here. Listen. So, after installing Distrobox and BoxBuddy, Jim, I'm curious to know how are some ways you've used Distrobox? Is there a way that you've used it to try something out, or do you see like a long-term usage for a specific function or feature?
Yeah, but basically just to try stupid applications that I have no idea if are any good or not.
I like that.
I mean, I'm sorry. There's a lot of applications out there that to me are not what they say they are, or I didn't understand what they said they were. Whichever way you want to put it, I'm willing to take the blame on this one. And I always am going into a virtual, lighting one up, not installed on a hard drive, just using the ISO, installing it, testing it out, and constantly screwing around trying to be able to do it. And now I don't have to do that. I have to thank Adam Krubbs. He's the guy who tried to help me out with Distrobox, and it's going to change the way I use my PC for the rest from now on, unless something new comes out that's better.
Right. Yeah, there's always that, it changes things for now, for sure. I think that it'll probably will be my third order of, if I need to get an application installed now, I'm probably not going to install it unless if it exists in the main one of the main repositories for me on my system. I'm probably not going to install it anymore on the host system. I will install it into a distro box. So I might actually make a special container just for that one application if I'm unsure about it, just to keep things clean.
Yep.
This brings me to my point. I was talking about how sandboxing and delivery are orthogonal.
Mm-hmm.
Guess what? Distrobox is. It is splitting those two concerns up. You are choosing the method of delivery, but applying a uniform method of sandboxing.
So is that good?
Yeah. No, it is, because what it means is that you are able to, you don't have to have somebody else do the work to get your application into a secure execution environment. And you are in total control of the security parameters for that application. That is the complete opposite of how everyone else is approaching it. And it's one of the reasons why I like the toolbox / distrobox model, is because it puts you back in the driver's seat about how you want to secure your environment.
Mm-hmm.
And I always feel that, and yes, I know not everyone is necessarily equipped to do this, and of course that's why you have other approaches. But I always feel that if you're capable and equipped and informed, you should be making those decisions and not someone else.
Yeah,
and
I agree.
taking that decision-making power away from you is, especially for something like this, where, when you look at a Flatpak or a Snap or an app image, those things are immutable deployment constructs that are not required, and in many cases don't have corresponding sources to document how they were made and how you can modify them and how you can build them and how you can redistribute them.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to open source software in particular, I value those freedoms very closely. And so for me, those formats have not been super attractive because that kind of stuff is just not, that is becoming less common in that space. In the beginning, all the Flatpaks were centrally built on FlatHub or whatever, and all the sources are available and you could kind of see how everything's being made. But over the past couple of years, FlatHub has moved to a model of allowing application makers to just directly upload their binary Flatpaks to FlatHub. And Canonical with the Snap Store has always allowed this. This was always a thing that they did. And I'm just, and while, of course, I don't get to have my cake and eat it too, where I get to see everything and how it's packaged for everything and be able to know what's going on, I don't like having it that way for as many, I would prefer to not have that for as many things as possible. And so I find Toolbox and Distrobox attractive because as someone who likes to be able to have things in a relatively safe environment, but still able to tinker if I need to, you can do that. And so I find it to be very appealing. That's why I decided to come on today, because it's like, I want to say that this stuff is great. Vastly prefer this over some of the other approaches that people have been pushing around for doing this because of that separation, and you get to be in the driver's seat of how you get the software, and you can still apply security rules and confinement and sandboxing and all that other fun stuff.
Right. And although I don't know the confinement portion of it, I really did not explore that. I'm sure there's probably some Distrobox commands for how you confine things. I'm guessing.
It's automatic.
Oh, it's automatic. Okay.
Yeah. What Distrobox lets you do is that you are very easily able to punch holes and see where, like, so I believe it automatically punches holes for the X11 and Wayland sockets, but you can close those up if you'd like.
Okay.
It'll punch holes for like select folders in your home root file system if you want to.
Right.
But again, you can choose to not do that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the kind of flexibility I find appealing. And it allows you to avoid some of the problems that I experience. Like, so I use some Flatpaks.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the biggest annoyances I have with some Flatpaks is dragging and dropping doesn't work, like at all. If I want to drag and drop a picture from my desktop and put it into, say, Element and have it be sent to a friend, it comes back as a broken 0-byte resource and it can't be sent.
Is that a Wayland issue though? Because I run.
It's a Flatpak sandboxing issue.
So I have the Prusa slicer that I use for my 3D modeling. On X, I can drag and drop things over, no problem, but on Wayland, I cannot.
So the reason why that happens is that with the X11 protocol, there is a transport mechanism for sending some of that stuff, but even then, there's a limit. If the file is sufficiently big enough, it can't be transported that way, and it needs to go through a side channel, and that doesn't work.
Okay.
So normally, I have this problem with pictures, right? Because there'll be multiple megabytes, or a photo in particular, and I want to share a photo with somebody, and I can't drag it in because it fails to be in the side channel because for some reason that's broken. It's hard to debug these kinds of things, but like when you're using Distrobox, a lot of that stuff is very obvious and very easy to like fiddle with. And when something doesn't work, it tells you how it's broken, and you can solve the problem. And that's just one of those things I really wish we had more of. Let's make it easier for you to figure out what's broken so it can be fixed.
Right. So some of that stuff I don't know how to debug yet. There was an application, a Kali application I was trying to run. I can't remember what it was called right now, but it's supposed to open up start a web service at like port 3000, and then it would automatically open up a browser to navigate to that. So that was cut off, and probably a good thing. But I didn't really I didn't research real heavy like how to solve that issue, and I'm sure there's a solution for that based on your explanation of how you can tune the permissions of a container. And I'm not sure how much I'm going to tune permissions, how many things I want to allow Kali to be able to do anyway. But so I have to sort of figure that one out. It's I want to learn some of these tools. For I want to up my cybersecurity game essentially. Be able to do some analysis of things, and so I think that might be a way to do it. But maybe I need to just do a full on virtualization with that. I don't know. I don't know enough about it yet. I'm still experimenting, still playing. But that would make sense if I can tune the permissions better to suit what my requirements. Maybe I can get it to work then in this Distrobox way. I have to see what's out there. So
it's a wide world of fun, that's for sure.
Well, yeah, it is. This is a whole new world of playing that I feel like I haven't experienced in Linux for like 10 years. When it was a little more wild westish, and so I think being able to like throw this stuff together, like I didn't really get it with like. I did a little bit of playing with Nix, and then that was like everyone. I feel like Nix is like the new Arch as far as people just like talking about it like crazy, which is fine. It's whatever people want to do, but that stuff didn't really like do anything for me. But now that I see how I can use it, maybe some of those like with I'm sorry. Now that I see how I can use Distrobox in a way where I can pick and choose the parts and pieces from different projects that suit me, this seems like a really good way of being able to do a whole new level of exploration for software, and I'm really excited about this.
Welcome to my world. This is the thing that like this is one of the reasons that 10 years ago I mean I didn't use Docker or Podman or any of these things for these kind of exploration, but I was using LXC and then later Systemd-nspawn for this stuff because there is so much untapped potential when you're able to just do things like, hey, I want to play with this application that I'm thinking about installing, but it could be kind of weird, and I don't know if I want it on my system yet. What if I just take a transparent snapshot of my host environment, boot it as a container, and then go ahead and install it and give it a shot? Again, benefit of Btrfs plus Systemd-nspawn is you can do stuff like that. You can tell it to just make a snapshot to boot into a container of your running system, and then when you're done, have it throw it away for you.
Yeah, that's cool.
There's a lot of very cool things and cool workflows that are possible when you realize that the abstractions that exist in Linux are yours to play with and no one else's. And so you can do all kinds of fun things. And Distrobox is a great example of this. You know, it started out as a shell script from the CoreOS people, CoreOS, but I like saying CoreOS because it's more fun.
It sounds more delicious anyway.
It does, doesn't it? Yes, more delicious.
Yeah.
And I hope to start a trend everywhere where people call the CoreOS people CoreOS, and it will be so much fun.
Especially
but
if like they made like custom like sandwich cookies at festivals and such to give away. That would be
that's such a good idea.
I would love that.
Idea.
Come CoreOS.
I would love that. George, I know you're listening. You're gonna have to go talk to the CoreOS people and make that happen.
I mean, I would enjoy that.
I would too. Yeah.
Who does not like
sure.
a cream-filled sandwich cookie? I mean, come on.
Right? Like,
yeah.
Well, okay, maybe people who are allergic to the ingredients of the cream-filled cookie, but those you have an excuse. No one else has an excuse.
Well, George does say that's the correct pronunciation of CoreOS. So he did say that. Yep.
So, but like it started out as a script for Toolbox to make it possible to do support requests without breaking the host system, and it's evolved all the way down the line into two forks in the road. A rewrite in Go that's called Toolbox, which has its own interesting advantages and disadvantages, maybe something to look into at some point. And then the other fork in the road is continuing the shell script-based approach of Distrobox, which has evolved to also handle things like being able to run graphical applications properly, being able to synchronize settings from the host and the guest for desktop stuff, being able to do all kinds, being able to re-export those application execution environments back into the host so that you can run them as shortcuts. That kind of stuff is really cool and very empowering.
Yes.
I love that stuff.
Yes. That's one of my favorite features. And actually, I'm going to, speaking of usage, so there's an application called TILP, T-I-L-P. So if you are one of like the maybe 16, 17 people that still use their graphing calculators from like the 1990s, which I do, I can put programs or do data dumps off of this onto my Linux system with this TILP program, and it does pull in a community repo. So there's a guy in the OpenSUSE world that does, maybe there's a couple that has well, it could be a chick, I don't know, that has the keeps that calculator, the software working. It's an open source project, be able to interact with it. And so what I've decided to do is move that into its own Distrobox container, and then take and export that application into my menu, and I don't notice any difference in how it runs. It just works. So I think that's really cool, and then it keeps my host system a little bit freer, and it even exports the icon and everything. Although that one, it didn't export the icon, so I'm not sure why that is. I can manually set that, so not a big deal. But anyway, so that to me is a pretty huge deal, because now when I go to do a sudo zipper dup on my OpenSUSE Tumbleweed machine, it's one less repository it's going to check before it goes and does the update. And this application really hasn't had any updates really. And I think there's been maybe some like security things really. So it's not really been had much love. But when there are if there is an update again or whatever, which is probably likely to happen anytime soon, then I'll get that eventually. So, just a real quick side note, Neil, I had a cloned a virtual machine, a really old virtual machine of Tumbleweed from December of 2021, and I sudo zipper dumped that, and it updated, no problems.
Wow.
Yeah.
You live a charmed life.
I do. It's part of the reason why, maybe it's because it's been so good to me, and I've been good to, to my chameleon.
I still want those chameleons. I saw a couple of chameleons in like one or two of the SUSE presentations at some conferences. I'm like, I want one of those.
Kind of like, is that like a rancher thing?
You can't have one. Yeah, the one with the rancher on one side
Yeah.
and the SUSE on the other side. I was like, you can't have them. It's like, but I want them. It's like, no. And I really want one of those.
That would be cool.
Those are nice.
I think it'd be if Gateway became a thing again, Gateway computers, with the cow logo. It'd be cool to have a chameleon for that.
Gateway's alive again, right?
Is it kind of like a zombie brand though?
Yeah, it's a zombie brand. Acer just trots it out, and I think they sub-licensed it to Walmart, so now Walmart makes computers with the Gateway brand. Yeah, I don't know either.
Well, whatever.
It's a thing. I know, because like the other day I was at Walmart and I saw a computer Gateway branded, and I was very confused. Because that's not supposed to be a thing.
If they brought back beige boxes with a big cow square on the front of it, I'd be all over it.
Oh gosh, I would. You know what? I miss those. Now everything we don't have color in most things at all. Like everything's black
or glass,
and or glass. Don't get me started. I don't like that one. That one I don't like. That trend sucks. But like, it's just I want color. You know what? I never owned one of these, but I wanted one so bad as a kid. I wanted that the ruby red, the strawberry red iMac G3 from '99.
The one that has the one that was used in or one like it that was used in Zoolander. That one.
Yes. Yep, that one.
Oh, the files are in the computer. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And
but like I miss colorful computers. I just miss the whole concept of like everything should have a splash of color and personalization. And it's not just the outer shell and the manufacturing, but also like when I look at desktops and the software and stuff like that, you can have whatever you like as long as it's black is a really, really crappy trend. And I would like to see more splashes of color in life. I know that's a really big side tangent, but like,
yeah, I think it's a possibility. I think skins are kind of a thing on things now. Like
that's true.
I skinned my my framework to a nice carbon fiber, black.
Well, but at least it started out silver.
Yeah.
Although Framework gave a good reason for why they don't offer it in multiple colors. They looked into it.
Oh, yeah?
And they made a blog. Yeah, they made a blog post about like why they don't do colors.
Imagine
it's
manufacturing complexity.
Yeah, basically, it's manufacturing complexity, and it's also trying to make sure that it doesn't fleck off or use toxic materials or and it kind of goes down this long list.
Right. I just wish they offered cases, like actual like.
Yeah, I think I would be happy if they like did little clamshells or whatever, like little rubberized shells that you could just clip on top. Like my MacBook has a rubberized shell that makes it strawberry red.
See,
because like Apple only offers silver and maybe space gray, and I don't like those colors very much. But yeah, like I have a red cover. I have a red keyboard cover on top. I have clamshell clips onto the back and the bottom that make it red. And so you will never mix up my computer with somebody else's.
I would like to have like a wood grain, some kind of actual wood, like a
I
case.
have seen a couple of those. I've seen like that's starting to, ever since LGR did that thing with the, did that series on wood grain, like it seems to be popping up randomly. Like I think System-76 makes a case that's got wood grain in it.
Yep.
And there's like a couple of other vendors that do it now, and it's just like this wood grain thing is starting to show up in the most random of places.
Well, I think the
woody.
the combination of metals and wood, to me, like just the right combination, I think it looks great.
A woody computer.
Yes, but that
Yep.
never looked good with like a green station wagon.
Right. Or on a Jeep.
I think a
The
Jeep would be
old-
okay.
The old Wagoneers used to be woodies.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I guess
And I
that
always wanted one of those.
it's never too late.
Right? They don't. Well, the new Wagoneers are just all metal, I think.
You can wrap it.
Oh.
So, will you keep using it? Actually, Eris, I haven't heard from you. Did you do much playing with Distrobox?
I did some. In some ways, I didn't know what to download. Because I pretty much get a lot from Flatpak. I mean, there are some packages, but I couldn't think out of the top of my head what I wanted to download that wasn't like a Flatpak or I got somewhere else.
Mhm.
So I did test some things, but it almost seems like too much in some ways.
Like too much work, or
Like it's too complicated.
oh, okay.
like let's say like I tried installing like PCman FM, right? And that didn't have my theming, like for my icons. It just looked like if I just install like I think I used an Arch, and it didn't have any theming at all. But then I remember I installed Nemo. I don't know if it was Arch or it was Fedora. And then since it's GTK, I guess, and I'm on GNOME Ubuntu, that worked fine. So I don't know if I need to change that for theming, or the theming asking too much of it.
Oh, no, that's a good question. So, Neil, how would the theming work? Is there a way to like allow that to access, like the
You have the same problem that you have with Flatpaks. The themes that you want to access need to exist inside of the execution environment.
Okay.
So you need to install the themes. The settings and the variables will probably be easy enough to be pulled over into Distrobox automatically, but you still need to have the themes in the Distrobox environment, in the container, to make it any good. This is the same way Flatpak does it. When you install a Flatpak that is, binds to a runtime that has theme extensions, quote unquote, what it does is it looks at your desktop settings and checks to see what theme you have. And if the theme that you have is not installed and it can find a matching extension, it will automatically go install it for you so that the application can pick it up.
it seems like Snaps and App Images do a little better job of that than the Flatpak at this point.
So App Images, their App Image has a completely different approach. App Images, we're going to make you have to use system stuff as much as possible. So your system stuff has to exist, and it can access it because there's no sandboxing. There is no isolation. There is no partitioning. It is just a pile of files that are going to run on your computer. So Snap does the same thing Flatpak does now, but originally what it did was just not work.
Well, yeah.
I think Flatpak, Snap, App Images kind of like it almost like spoiled me. If I would have found out about Distrobox before these other technologies, I think I would have been more excited. And I think I could be more excited about Distrobox, but it just seems like a lot of uphill things like configuring. Like it would be nice if I could configure so that the box would set up itself, the distro box container, and I can have a specific settings and everything would be more automatic. But that seems like an uphill battle without knowing all the information beforehand.
Yeah, I'm still in the. I would still call it the early stages of exploration with it myself. So I don't. I guess I'll figure that out over time, or when I run into other problems, I guess, or things that irritate me, I'll probably try and understand how to correct those as such. But there's some things like that just aren't available on OpenSUSE or just don't work as well in OpenSUSE as they do like on Debian or Ubuntu. So there are things like what I intend on doing is I think I'm going to try running Discord and see how that runs on Ubuntu in my distro box. Things like that. I don't know how it's going to go, but we'll see. Because that would then solve my it's not updating problem. Although I think Flatpak's better now, but like I've had Flatpak and Snap both like not be updated when I need to run it. And someone on Twitter Twix said they gave me a recommendation for how to fix that so it doesn't check for updates before it starts, so then you don't have that problem. But I didn't properly record that, and that was too long ago now. I don't know how to search for that. But anyway, yes, Twix. I think Twix is what it should be called. I think because Twix is delicious. Yeah, Discord to.
When is Twix not delicious?
I've never had a Twix I didn't like. Have you ever had a Twix you didn't like? I'm like, oh, this Twix is awful. No one has ever said that. Maybe
No,
someone
I don't
else.
think I've ever heard that. I've never said it. I don't think I've ever heard that.
You have chocolate coating some kind of a cookie with a filling, and there, it can be caramel or peanut butter, or they have like a whole variety of things now. Yeah, it's pretty great.
They've got fruit versions too.
Really, I didn't know that.
Oh no, wait, that's Kit Kats. I mixed that up.
It happens.
Kit Kats have them.
Kit Kats have a lot of cool things too. Like they had like a minty one that I thought I had once. And CCJ 1998 says Discord today's your lucky day. Download this Deb on Arch. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. So that would just be nice to just have that not be an issue. Although I just run it as a web app now, so I guess that works just as well for my purposes. But I'm not a serious Discord user. So, yeah. So then will you keep using it, Jinda? Do you see this being a regular?
Yes. Yeah, unfortunately, I'm going to keep using it.
Unfortunately?
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm going to keep using it because I like trying out different applications. And to me, this seems the easiest way to try one out and ditch it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't care if the theming works or not. I just want to try the application as quickly as I can.
Right.
And try the next one and the next one and the next one to make the whole system go away. And
Mm-hmm.
like you said, have my system clean, so to speak.
Right. So what about you, Eris? Do you see yourself continue to use this, or does Flatpak now sort of scratch that itch for application accessibility?
I think I would have to come up with an application that I need first. Maybe if I need to test something, because I do not like just installing anything on my system. But since I'm planning on distro hopping, once Plasma 6 comes out,
Mm-hmm.
then I actually installed this through I think wget. I think I did that command for instead of the repo one, which is supposedly old for Ubuntu 23.10.
Okay.
So
What are you running now for your distribution? You said you're going to hop when it comes out, but what are you running now?
Ubuntu 23.10.
Okay. So Neil, is Distrobox something you use often, and will you continue using it?
I don't use Distrobox that much myself because I don't really have a whole lot of need for it.
Mm-hmm.
My workflow tends to be I have permanent Systemd-nspawn containers that I futz around with, or temporary ones that I actually instantiate from my running computer. Because I'm mostly trying to test to make sure, for me, most of the time my workflow involves testing things to make sure it works on my computer for
Okay.
me. And so Distrobox doesn't really help with that at all. But Distrobox is neat when, in cases in the past where I'm forced to use an application that doesn't exist for Fedora, that I need to, that I have to be able to use, you know, I can just install it in its preferred environment in the container and then re-export it back out and then just pretend Distrobox doesn't exist. That is pretty much how I would use it.
Gotcha. I think I already said how I intend on using it, but I think when I do run into a theming issue as being an issue, I'll probably then explore how to solve that. That probably would be a part 2 for me. Not for here, but like for me personally. But yeah, but I'm really impressed just in general how smooth it worked and how, for me, I was just rather impressed by that. It wasn't many times when there's like, oh, this application has all these really cool functions. For me, it's like running it through a maze with a blindfold on, and I like run into walls. Like, oh, and I gotta figure this out. Oh, I gotta figure this out. Oh, but this just sort of worked for me, and I really appreciated that. You know, once I understood what the different commands did, and which there's some great guides out there to make it really easy. But yeah, BoxBuddy was definitely the kind of the missing piece of it for me to make it so it's going to be easy to go forward as far as like trying other things out and to better utilize it, I should say. So, yep.
The thing I don't understand is that I tried it on my laptop. I got an old laptop that has 2 gigs of RAM in it, and it works in that flawlessly. I mean, the amount of power this is taking is so minute. I was like, you have to be kidding me, because that was what amazed me. This computer is 32 gigs of RAM and a giant, 24 thread processor, Whatever I throw at this is not going to care. And I'm like, would this thing actually, so I ran it in VirtualBox to see if it would work, and it worked flawlessly in there. And I'm like, wait a minute, how much resources is this thing really taking? And I actually did it in a laptop that someone threw out. It was, it's got a little tiny processor and 2 gigs of RAM and nothing. It just worked flawlessly.
Yeah, that's actually very, very cool. I wonder what the actual overhead is. I'm sure it varies from box to box, Distrobox to Distrobox,
right.
whatever running inside there. But it didn't seem to. I didn't seem to see any performance penalties using it, so I didn't do a memory.
There shouldn't be any, because the way that it works is you're initializing an execution environment, and then you're running a program. So and you're sharing a kernel, you're sharing the hardware resources, you're sharing the sockets, you're sharing the API file systems. You're just running a program with a different set of libraries. At the end of the day, that's all that's really happening.
Right.
So if there's overhead, the overhead is basically, the in-memory copy on write, where it lets you save resources by using the same library in 2 different places, is probably not working because the library is not the same anymore. And that's about it.
But I don't have that as an issue, though. So that's good. So,
I do want to say that I appreciate for a BoxBuddy that it gives you that one button to update your container.
Yeah.
Because depending on what distro you have, you would have to end up looking it up how to update that.
Right.
Nice to have one button for that.
Also, I like on BoxBuddy how you can actually side load a package into it as well, which I thought was pretty cool. You can, if you have a deb or a RPM or whatever it is you're running, you can just open that up. I don't know what R chooses, can't remember, but I thought that was very handy as well. So it was neat. It was pretty rad, I think. Maybe even groovy.
Oh,
Yeah.
man, going to groovy.
Whoa.
I know, it's
Groovy.
pulling out the big guns. But
Pulling out the big ones, going to groovy. Skipped over swell, went right to groovy.
is that a breach in protocol?
Maybe.
might
The
be.
one fun thing I loved is that I had to go learn how to install packages on every operating system that I've never used. I'm like, how do I do it? I don't know.
Yeah.
So I have a list. I have a file now. I'm all listed.
Yeah. I've been using a lot of Debian-based things lately, so I'm a lot more comfortable there. Yeah, but it was just nice. I think I just feel like the display from apt, like isn't quite as clean and easy to read.
Pretty.
It's not as pretty as like Zipper or DNF. DNF is actually very pretty, so they've done a good job with presentation there. I do have to say. Hats
You're
off to
welcome.
you. Hats off to you, DNF. You went from do not finish to does not fail, I guess.
Yeah, does not fail.
But
Oh, I have one for yes, but I can't say it on here.
it is a family-friendly show. I don't have to explain to my kids what that word
Yes.
is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that word by Chris. It's just one of his. He's
Yet
from
another poopy tool. There you go.
yet another
Yes.
system tool. Oh, I see. No, yes is great.
Yeah.
I like yes.
Yep.
Especially in the terminal.
Yep.
All right. Well, I think that pretty much does it on Distrobox/BoxBuddy for us. So I guess we'll move on to what is going on next week. So next week, we are going to have an open mic night. So whatever topics you have that are Linux tech or open source related, bring them. It's going to be just kind of a free-for-all. I'll have some things, it's already some canned things in the chute, because we always do. Thanks to that news and discussion thread on Telegram, where people keep, putting things in there. It makes it a lot easier for me to, pull things out, and I appreciate that. So thank you, everyone, for contributing. It's a wonderful thing. So for a little housekeeping, not a lot here. We have a calendar, Linux Saloon calendar. I owe you some updates on that. I've been doing it like 1 week in advance. I have to go through and knock that out, just in case I got to check my calendar, make sure there's anything coming up that's going to inhibit me from a weekend or whatever. But if you have any burning topics that you would like to throw our way, you can send any suggestions for discussions or distributions, applications, poll ideas to suggestions@linuxsaloon.com. I like email. I'm still a little behind on checking my email. I think I got it down to about 1,500 emails I got to go through yet. And then also you can tag myself or Eris or something in the Telegram, Discord. I think we're short on a matrix right now. Maybe we should fix that, I suppose. So we have a little time here for some discussion. Here's a fun piece of news. I don't know if you saw this, if you read this already. I'm sure Neil probably has his own set of opinions on this, which I think might be entertaining. But the DOJ quietly removes Russian malware from routers in U.S. homes and businesses. This is from Ars Technica. Said more than 1,000. Yeah, well, it's from February of this year. More than 1,000 Ubiquiti routers in homes and small businesses were infected with malware used by Russian-backed agents to coordinate them into a botnet for crime and spy operations, according to the Justice Department. That malware, which worked as a botnet for the Russian hacking group Fancy Bear, was removed in January 2024 under a secret court order as part of Operation Dying Ember. That's kind of a fun name. According to the FBI director, its affected routers running Ubiquiti's Edge OS, but only those that had not changed their default administrative password. Well, if you haven't changed your default administrative password, I mean, come on, man. access to the routers allowed the hacking group to conceal the otherwise and otherwise enabled a variety of crimes. The DOJ claims, including spear phishing and credential harvesting in the U.S. and abroad. The DOJ also used the MooBot malware to copy and delete the botnet files and data, according to the DOJ, and then changed the router's firewall rules to block remote management access. During the court-sanctioned intrusion, the DOJ enabled temporary collection of non-content routing information that would expose Guru attempts to thwart the operation. This did not impact the router's normal functionality or collect legitimate user content information, the DOJ claims. The DOJ states it will notify affected customers to ask them to perform a factory reset, install the latest firmware, and change their default administrative password. So, I thought that was pretty cool. And I think the neat part there is sometimes our government does actually help us.
Wow. All right. So here's the thing. This is not the first time that they've done this.
Okay.
Yeah, it's happened a few times. Like if you search, there are other examples of either the FBI or the Department of Justice or some other organization within the United States government quietly fixes a ton of people's computers or appliances or routers or insert networked device here, right? Because they have gained control of a botnet and shut it down. Or they've got reverse engineered a malware control system and turned it back on itself, or something like that. It's not a very highly appreciated thing that they do, but I personally appreciate it. I like it when my government makes sure that I don't have random state hackers in my stuff.
Right. Yeah, I think the cyber aspect of defense, I think is going to be a generally tough one, and I'm not even really sure how to I'm not really even sure how to have a conversation around it in such a way that I think I'd make any have anything positive to say, really, because on one hand, I would like for them to actually help American people, the people of the country. And then, on the other hand, I kind of feel like they should leave me alone, but also like a botnet, a coordinated botnet controlled by a bad actor, that can hurt a lot of people. So I'm kind of in one of those, I'm not sure exactly how to handle that one, just in general. But either way, I think this I'm very happy about. It makes me question Ubiquity in the future, though.
Well, so the thing is, they aren't the only ones that have been screwed like this, right? If you read the article, there are mentions of the previous efforts where the U.S. government has stepped in to repair machines, repair network appliances and routers in particular from, I think, previously Chinese attacks and a couple of others. And it's just the problem is that when you have a very complex supply chain where all kinds of things can happen, and you're not making all the software and not all of it is open source, and you don't have anyone in the chain of the final product development making sure that everything is actually good, nefarious people can slip things in. And it just keeps happening, and it's going to keep happening. And this is what, and the fact that stuff like this happens where the government actively steps in and fixes it, I'm okay with that. It's out of my realm of control to be able to make it so that these things don't happen. It is out of my realm of control of being able to reasonably verify that something like this isn't happening with hardware that I buy. So all I can hope for is that I'm not a juicy enough target, or that someone cares enough to fix it when they discover there's a problem.
Right. Yeah, I think that it's a complicated problem for even more complicated solution. But I think fewer links in that manufacturing chain would probably be helpful too, I think.
Well, I think this is why we're starting to see the different countries in the world trying to have manufacturing locally, more locally.
Mm-hmm.
Like the United States is doing this. You're seeing there's several efforts in Europe to try to kick in high-tech manufacturing. I think, personally, I'm not sure whether a lot of these efforts will succeed, but they're all trying. And this is a big part of why. It is really hard with how the supply chain works now for modern electronics to be able to have any kind of reasonable assurance of security.
Yeah, but I mean, just 30 years ago, most electronics were actually made in the United States that we got. Yes, Eris.
So I just wanted to point out that since I guess in the past few years, couple of years, there has been a very proactive approach from the White House to provide guidelines about how to improve security. And now they're saying trying to tell manufacturers that it would be ideal for every um, appliance, every like router to have you configure a password as soon as you set it up, so it doesn't have a default password.
Right.
So a lot of these things are being updated as far as guidelines, and hopefully that does make everything much more safe in the future.
And that'd be on the individual to do the right thing. So that's the other challenge here too.
Well, the manufacturer would be the first step, and then the user is always the weakest point after all.
Exactly. All right, another, speaking of like security-ish type stuff. So Signal finally rolls out usernames so you can keep your phone number private. That was, I think, a big hang-up for me with Signal. So I think, I've got maybe two contacts in Signal because I don't like it. So from Wired.com. So it says today, and that was, I don't know when that was, but Signal launched the rollout and beta of its long-awaited set of features it's describing simply as phone number privacy. Those features, which Wired has tested, are designed to allow users to conceal their phone numbers as they communicate on the app instead to share a username as a less sensitive method of connecting with one another, rather than give your phone number to other Signal contacts as the identifier. They used to begin conversation with you. In other words, you can now choose to be discoverable via a chosen handle, or even to prevent anyone who does have your phone number from finding you on Signal. So I think that's great, and so that increases my likelihood of using Signal. But because I can't use it the way I want, I don't like it. So. Does anybody here use Signal? I see it says.
I have it. I don't like it.
Yeah.
I use it all the time.
Oh.
I mean, I wish I could use it more, but convincing people to give up texting sometimes it's like asking too much.
I've given up on that. I just use Ferdium, and I have all my different chatting applications in there, and then I can just, when I see notifications. Although I still have a hard time checking the Facebook one. I don't know what. I think it's a mental block for me. But anyway. Well, that was kind of exciting.
Do you mean Meta?
whatever it's called. The Meta chat. I think.
Still Facebook, then.
Yeah. I think I have I had someone ask me today, so are you on Facebook? I'm like, I have an account. But that's about the extent of it.
That's the end of the thread. That's the end of that thread there.
Right. Says, well, I don't know if you saw on Facebook, but I was, and they explained that they did, and I'm like, no, I don't enjoy the experience of Facebook. I like, I think my number one right now is Twix, and then probably YouTube. Well, no, probably YouTube first, because that's considered social media, I guess, and then Twix, then. I don't have Mastodon on my phone. I haven't enjoyed that very much, but I have it in Ferdium, so I check it almost daily. Actually, I don't even check. I don't even check social media daily. I don't have time for that. Ain't nobody got time for that. As I might say. So I don't know if this is. I don't know if this is still a good article, but you can help shape the future of Kubuntu and win some awesome prizes from 9 to 5 Linux. The Kubuntu Graphic Design Contest is a joint effort between the Linux hardware vendor, Kubuntu Focus, and the team of developers behind Kubuntu Linux to modernize the Kubuntu brand artwork, including elements like logo, font, color, palette, as well as the default desktop environment in time for the upcoming Kubuntu 24.04 LTS release. The first place winner will go home with a Kubuntu-powered computer. Cool. Either the Kubuntu Focus IR14 laptop or the Kubuntu Focus NX mini PC with 32 gigabytes of RAM. But there's not only one winner at the Kubuntu team. Will also award the second and third places in the contest, who will win Kubuntu Focus branded merchandise of up to $50 USD shipped, a trophy and certificate. In addition, the second prize winner will also get a runner-up entry featured in the Kubuntu.org website. So I think that's pretty cool. So it'll be a lucky winner out there that's going to have, or a computer. And yeah, I haven't used Kubuntu in a long time, but it's always been, I think, a good experience. So, and this one, Neil might be able to probably excited about this. So, Fedora's Workstation's Anaconda Web UI installer delayed to Fedora 41. So, from Phoronix.
Yes.
Says, for over 2 years, Red Hat's engineers have been working on the Anaconda installer. They've been working on a modern web-based installer UI that integrates with Cockpit and a modern alternative to their GTK-based installer interface for deploying Fedora Linux and eventually RHEL 2. The hope was to offer this web UI installer option with Fedora Workstation 40, but that's now been delayed to Fedora 41. But a show-stopping issue has come to light that has now led to this feature being diverted to 41 instead. The matter was raised over an important difference in behavior during the storage disk setup between the existing installer and the new web UI solution. With existing behavior on Fedora 39 and prior, the user could queue up storage changes to make for the installation and then apply it as a batch after all the changes have been made. But with the Cockpit-based UI, the storage changes are applied immediately as selected, with the storage changes being applied immediately rather than at the end of at the end of making all storage configuration changes. There is valid concern that a misclick or other storage misconfiguration could lead to unintended data loss. So that doesn't seem like a terribly difficult fix. Is that like a kind of an order of operations thing?
It seems like a philosophical one.
It's kind of, so the argument that they've pushed back on is that this is how Cockpit storage has been architected forever, and no one's ever had to say anything about this. But I mean, I didn't know that was how Cockpit storage worked, because I don't use Cockpit for storage. Because Cockpit storage only gains support for Butterfest as part of porting Anaconda to it. So I had no interest in it, so I had no idea that this paradigm was different. Every other partitioning tool I've ever used is what we term as plan then apply, which is you set up the configuration, you confirm that you're happy with it, it warns you that it's going to break everything as you do it, and then you ignore the warning and click it anyway because you are firmly confident that you didn't break it.
Right.
The way that the Cockpit storage module works is as you make changes, it just does them.
Right, and that could be problematic, I suppose. Because even like gparted and like the KDE partitioner, you do all the work.
Yeah, they're all plan then apply, which actually, funnily enough, plan then apply didn't exist before Anaconda. I mean, I believe Anaconda is the one that invented the concept more than 10 years ago, because before that, it was Disk Druid in the old Anaconda, and the old Disk Druid was also immediate apply. And then they changed I think it was like in 2011 or 2012, with the Anaconda UI that everyone knows to /love or hate. That UI introduced plan then apply for the whole installation process, including partitioning. Basically, nothing is actually applied to disk until you hit the begin install button. And every installer ever since has followed that model. Like, so I don't know. Like my personal feeling about it is I would really like a solid justification for why a web UI can't batch up all the operations and then in the UI and then send it to the backend when it's ready to go. Because a front end back end split. I mean, if you've worked with any web development or any real non-trivial split architecture development, the front end can do whatever the heck it wants, and that can be queued up and then send a single summation command to the backend to actually do the thing after reconciling what all the changes actually are. But I don't know. Like, it's personally, I would like plan then apply to be implemented in cockpit storage. I think it's actually useful regardless of whether it's for installation or anything else. But I don't know if you know this, but it's a hard world to be in when you're trying to commercially support Linux in the desktop and server and all this other stuff these days. People don't think it's worth investing in anymore. It's a difficult place. Like, I was at Red Hat during the time that the layoffs happened. I wasn't affected by those layoffs. My not being part of Red Hat is a whole separate matter. But those layoffs were painful. And
Yeah.
it's not just Red Hat, it's all the companies. They're all doing it. Everybody's doing layoffs, and it keep doing layoffs. And it hurts, and it keeps making things worse because you just don't have the people to do the things that you're supposed to be doing. And everyone's all traumatized, and they think that they don't have the ability to do stuff. And then there's also sometimes some of the companies have kind of gotten into this mindset that they can't do things that they know that they can do because they feel like there's no opportunity for success or support for it. And so, because they've been burned a long time ago, the burns are still felt today, even if the situation may have changed.
Mm-hmm.
You get that. It's a thing.
So just an anecdote. I have a brother who's he does project management in software, and he was lamenting over this project that he's on. That I think he just stepped into it, or he had been part of it, and somebody higher up made some changes. But anyway, so it was supposed to be whatever they were doing, supposed to be implemented in January, I think is what it was. And in December or November, they had a mass layoff, and like the key developers that were on this project, they let them go. And so my brothers, higher up, whatever, were like, this was scheduled to be out in January. Why is this not done? And so he's like, well, because you laid off the people that were working on it, and so now everyone else has to pick up the pieces. And it's not complete. So I think maybe it was like delayed by a couple months, maybe 3 months. I don't know what it was, but anyway. So I thought that was pretty funny. I'm like, well, it seems like who's ever running that show, there's kind of a bunch of clowns. If you lay off the people who are doing the work that you need to get done. So I don't know.
I mean, most of the layoffs are not rational. They're based on cargo culting and pressure from external investors who are like, you need to do this because otherwise we know you're wasting money. That's the crux of the argument that keeps happening behind closed doors.
Yeah, I mean, I get that, but if you're going to invest in a company, it means you assume risk too. So
that reminds me of when Elon Musk took over Twitter, and he started laying off people and firing them like everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And then he figured out that some of these people were like kind of important. So then he begged them to come back to the company because nobody knew how anything worked except those people.
Yeah. Well, seemingly they've got it figured out now, I guess. I still have Twix, so it still works. Yeah. Sometimes, that it's funny. I think I think that's a pretty standard practice for corporations. It seems like larger corporations, because the previous company I worked for, they did a lot of mass layoffs, and then it was like key people they laid off, and then they asked them to come back. And a lot of times those people told them, "No, we're not. No, I'm not. I'm perfectly content not being there now." So, but it seems to be I think it's like standard practice. You suspend thinking about who to lay off, and you do it by the numbers or whatever. So, anyway, what can you do? I think we have time for one more real quick one. So Miracle WM announced as a Wayland compositor built on Mir. So also from Phoronix, Canonical engineer Matthew Kosarek announced the first ever release of Miracle WM as a Wayland compositor built on top of Mir. Miracle WM features a tiling window manager and aims to serve the needs by compositors like i3 and Sway, but with flashier graphics for those of us who prefer a desktop full of smooth transitions and colors. I think that's great news. So, because I wonder if then that window manager could be used for other projects then as well, besides just the tiling window managers. I don't know. Hopefully, I'd like to see more progression toward the Wayland side of things, but I guess we'll see. Anyway, that was pretty good news. Very exciting.
It's interesting how all these canonical projects that you think were dead are not dead, and they're still going on somewhere else.
Yep. Well, I remember for a while, on the Ubuntu podcast, they would do like another article in the "Mir is not dead" category or segment, whatever. "Mir is not dead" something. I always thought that was funny. So I don't even know the extent of my familiarity. Familiarity with Mir is they talked about it, and I know nothing about it beyond that. So, but it's not dead. All right. Well, it is that time for last call. So if let's see, no Eric this week, which is unfortunate, but he probably has things to do. So I saw Steve. He was in the chat. He did say howdy all. He just joined because he was watching Oppenheimer, I guess. So Oppenheimer's more important than Wayland Saloon, Linux Saloon. So, but he does a show every Sunday morning, nearly every Sunday morning, lately every Sunday morning, at 8:15 a.m. Central. Steve's very own. He talks about whatever he wants to talk about. A lot of times it's cool things he's doing with OBS, and he claims he doesn't like Linux anymore, but he does these things on Linux. So there we go. Because he just doesn't talk about Linux. Because he used to distro hop, but he doesn't. He's got his distro of. I think he has his forever distro now, so that's where it goes. After a while, you just fall into something.
OBS is his distro.
That's right. OBS is a distro. It's his desktop anyway. His DE. I think he uses Pop. Doesn't he use Pop?
Yeah, he likes Pop.
I prefer to call it Soda. If you have not checked out Linux User Space in a while, do so. Another episode comes out Monday. It is a Mate history episode, so they're doing this one just for Chris.
Oh, you got my attention.
Yeah, I said your name. That's why.
Yeah.
But so you can check out linuxuserspace.show or lus.sh. Monday they'll have a brand new, fresh out of the mint episode, History of Mate. So it'll be good times. I'm on a podcast called Linux Out Loud. Wendy and I, we had another episode. Matt couldn't make it again. He had a work conflict. He said he couldn't make it just shortly before we had to record, which is kind of a bummer. But so we chatted about the different things we're working on. So it was fun for me. See if it's fun for you. I have a website called cubiclelay.com. I've done a lot of things recently, so I think I've talked about my Distrobox, BoxBuddy, kind of a basic thing, how I'm using it on OpenSUSE. Also, the disable input devices in Wayland, and also a Gridfinity screwdriver rack holder thing. It's something that it's a derivative of another work. So just to make it so my screwdrivers fall in place. So I just kind of wrote about that because I was excited. That's all. It's probably not very good, but I did release some models for that. And also KRFB, the remote desktop sharing in Plasma Wayland. It works great, although sometimes I find it doesn't start up. I don't know why. I don't know. It's weird. But anyway, so you can check that out if you care. Also, I've been working on a Framework 13 review article on since I've had it now for about 6 months. You know how it's working out for me, because there's always that buyer's remorse thing. Sometimes you buy something, you think it's gonna be great, and then you end up like not using it. So it's kind of talking about that. So check that out, cubicandlate.com. Sometimes I do things, and lately I am. So Linux Saloon is part of the Tux Digital Network. Check out more great shows at tuxdigital.com. I want to thank you all for your support, however you do it, being a part of the conversation in both the Zoom meeting and the YouTube stream, as well as everyone involved as well as everyone for watching the show after the fact. I want to thank everyone involved in making the Linux and open source tools possible for us to not only have this conversation, but also to have fun and enjoy our technology, because Linux truly puts personal back into personal computer, and then I think with Distrobox even more so, maybe. Thank you for stopping by. Be sure to tip your developers, and please remember to Linux responsibly. Until next time, see yas. So I got the little thanks for watching thing out now, and then I can just stop streaming.